Welcome everybody back to the Scaled Success Reptile Podcast, episode 64. And we have John Barry of Designer Morphs, going to come and talk to us with 40 years of experience in the reptile world. So really good, excited for this one. I've, saw John Barry or heard of John Barry from the Hognose community first. And then, once I've dived deep into other species or made friends with different species, then knew that he worked with ball pythons. He had his ball python book and then his also Western Hognose book. So, it's really cool because I think this is going to, a lot of people are going to benefit from this podcast and hearing his knowledge and, stuff that he written in his book and maybe even updated information that that has been changed or has developed since he's written his last books. But in the meantime, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and if you guys have questions for John Barry and want to know anything about either any of the species he's been working with, hognose, ball pythons, boas, and stuff, that make sure you guys drop a super chat and to support the channel, and we'll definitely talk about it and see if we can answer your questions. And my podcast go really as a flow of conversation, how it goes. But before we bring on John, I want to, give you guys a quick update of what's going on in the clovers reptile world. And what we have is, this weekend, we just had the All-American Reptile and Plant Expo in Charlotte, North Carolina. And, big shout out to the team out there. They put on a good production, very organized, great after setup. They took care of the vendors, and then Saturday night also organized a little get together for the vendors. So that was really cool. It was the first one, so we'll see how it starts to develop after a few more shows. They're planned to be back out there in April and in September again next year. So we'll see how the show develops with the the amount of breeders and vendors that show up, and also the type of clients that show up to the show. So we had that show, and then I'm pretty sure, did we have a podcast after Dallas? I'm not even sure. Between the shows, the podcast here, the podcast on Husbandry Pro. Shout out to Husbandry Pro. If you guys are interested in use the code Clover60 to get a 60 free trial. But Dallas was 2 weekends ago, and that was really went very, very well. It was a second time being the NARBC had moved from Arlington to Dallas. So that was the second show in Dallas. So it seemed like people were more aware of it being in Dallas. More customers came out, and we did great there. So, big shout out to anybody that, bought a hognose from us in Dallas or just came by, say hi, hung out, talked to reptiles, took pictures with us. Really appreciate all that support. So I have a Dallas NRBC like half walkthrough, did a couple interviews, like 10-minute interviews with a couple of the vendors there, hognose breeders, ball python breeders, and that's probably gonna drop sometime here, probably Friday, Saturday morning after I'm done editing. So that'll be dropping there if you guys want to take a look at that. And that'll be our first vendor and show walkthrough and interview. So if you guys check that out, let us know how we did. If you're interested in more, and we'll be doing more as we do a couple more shows. We have 3 more shows for the rest of the year, and that is so October 19th and 20th is Scales Expo in West Palm Beach, Florida. And then we have Repticon Tampa in November. I got to get the dates for those. I don't have it in my computer calendar. And then after that, we have Repticon Orlando. Always a good show at Repticon Orlando. Love the people come out. The customers always are looking for some good high quality hognose. So really enjoy that that show. So we got going on. As I mentioned before, our breeding season, we didn't have double clutches, so it was pretty short, but everything hatched. We have plenty of babies still available from the 2024 season, and still maybe about 12, 13 hatching, mostly males, available from 2023 breeding season. A lot of this stuff is higher end sable, Arctic sables, AAA het lavender stuff. Really some of the higher end projects that somebody might be interested in looking in. Except they're yearlings already, so the males are ready to go in brumation and ready to breed next season. So if you're looking for within like the coral, the Arctic Mai Tais project, we have plenty of males available that you guys can just plug in right into your projects for those. So check out our Husbandry Pro store. The link is below, or our Morph Market. All of our animals are listed on both. And what else do we got going on? I'm trying to think. That's pretty much it with the video, with the expos, the hatchlings that we have available. Now starting to slow down, getting ready for brumation. That's in about a month. Next week is already October 1st. So in about a month after next week, a month and a week is brumation time frame. So last minute, feeding females, getting them ready, males and females, feeding all the breeders up, and then preparing them for brumation. So, again, the cycle comes and ends real fast, and it's just a continuous cycle for that. Let's say what's going on to a couple people before we bring on John. Jane X Exotics, James Perry, what's going on? Thank you for joining us tonight. Keys Constricted, thanks to the Keys family, what's going on? Good to see you guys here tonight. Dustin from SMK, thanks for joining us tonight too. JQ Ball Pythons, I gotta say, JQ is old school guy. He actually messaged me, I think earlier this year or last year, something later last year, asking if I was gonna bring John Barry on. And I told him, like, we're working on it, and it's happening today. Part of the V Unit family, the V Unit CEO himself, Villarino Reptiles, Emilio. What's going on, brother? Thanks for joining us tonight. TNA Snakes, Anthony, as usual, thank you for the support and joining in tonight. Bohemian Exotics, Carissa, thanks for joining in tonight. And if, like I said, thanks for joining in tonight. And before we bring on John, let's give a shout out to, first of all, USARK National. They fight for, our rights and fight against legislations. I'll say, not our rights. I'll say our privileges to keep reptiles, and fight against legislations that would, ban or put restrictions on the type of breed or how many reptiles you can keep. And then also USARK Florida, which is, Florida has a big history of being the leader of legislations against reptiles. So, USARK Florida is always fighting and, trying to be proactive if finding legislations within the state or out of the state. So make sure you guys go get a membership to either, or both. Actually, the best thing will be get a membership to both USARK National and USARK Florida, because they both need the financial support and the numbers. So when they go against legislation, they go have to sit up against, present information and facts to legislators. We have the numbers. We have the numbers backing the information that they're giving. So that's very important in that situation. And then, let's give a shout out to the 2024 sponsors and partners of the Scaled Success and Clover's Reptile channel.
I want to take this moment to mention and thank our sponsors and partnerships. Sea Serpents is our official sponsor, known for their exceptional customer service and top quality. They offer a wide range of PVC racks and incubators designed to meet the needs of every reptile enthusiast. Their products are built with durability and efficiency in mind, ensuring your reptiles have a safe and comfortable environment. Whether you're a hobbyist or a professional breeder, Sea Serpents has the perfect solution for your growing collection. Want to take your reptile husbandry and record keeping to the next level? Use our exclusive code CLOVER60 for a free 60-day trial of Husbandry Pro, an all-in-one reptile tracking software that will streamline your reptile care routine. When it comes to shipping or receiving our reptiles, Ship Your Reptiles is our top choice. Trust them to handle your reptiles with care. Use code CLOVERS15 to save on your next shipment. Feeding your reptiles a varied diet is essential, and Reptilinks offers raw, whole prey reptile food trusted by the best zoos and keepers in the industry. Use code CLOVER to save $5 on your next order. Thank you for your support.
All right. So big shout out, I said, to our sponsor, Sea Serpents. Chris, great guy, great supporter of the community. I can't say much more about him. Just a great person, great company. So if you guys are, looking for racks or incubator, go check him out. And then anything that we are promoting today or and through our partnerships, we personally use here at Clover's Reptiles. So, if you have any questions about it, send us a DM on Instagram or drop a comment down below. And without further ado, let's bring on Mr. John Berry. Let me see. Welcome, John.
Hey, Eval, how you doing?
Doing good.
Good, man. Great.
Yeah. One of the biggest thing I've mentioned leading up to this podcast is that, it was about a year since I reached out to you and stuff like that. I know you recently had a move across, away the country and stuff like that. But glad that we could finally figure out a day and time that worked for both of us, and you're here today,
Yeah, no worries. And I must say, I was listening in the background while you were doing your update. I thought, man, you're a busy dude. You're doing shows all over the place. And
so
what's happening?
Yeah. So you were saying you're doing shows and stuff?
No, I said you're doing shows and podcasts and stuff. You're actually a really busy guy. That's one of the new things that is over the last number of years that I've really seen, without you asking me the question, but I'm just going to say, when I started, there were no shows, there were no podcasts, there was no internet.
Yeah.
And today there's so many, resources available. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. And that's, we live in the age of, free information, right? So it's very interesting to live in that time frame and being able, just in general, whatever topics, but in the age of free information about reptiles and the information just be readily accessible at a Google search. It's really, really interesting.
Yeah. when I started back in the 70s, we basically had a lot of books and National Geographic, and that was like our resource library. And today you just go online, and the problem with day to day, even with AI, I have a parallel career in tech, but the problem with that, you got to be selective of what you ask and what you get in. So just because you get it's on the internet, it doesn't mean it's good information. There's a lot of good information, but you got to sift through it and be and basically check it out and see you're following the right people and you're taking advice from the right people.
Yes, that's a very good point. Because you can, was that good old saying, fake it till you make it. You can really fake it online. If you do the right, talk to the right people, talk the right way, show what specifically you want to show. You can definitely fake it till you make it on social media and the internet. Because you can show all your goods and none of your failures and the bad stuff that's happening. And everybody thinks like, wow, this person is killing it with no failures, no hiccups. But, we know the reality of keeping reptiles and live animals. That isn't the reality. There's always hiccups and there's always stuff that can and will go wrong.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, if sometimes, these last couple of years, I don't have a big collection now. I've really cut down and scaled down my collection. But I had really two terrible breeding years. I mean, really terrible. As you mentioned, I moved from Florida to Texas just over a year ago. And so I didn't breed a lot of my animals. And then when I came to move, it's like 110 degrees. So I couldn't fly a lot of the animals. So I had to leave some and ship them later. But I filled my car and I drove here, and it was so hot. And I actually lost a couple of neonates, a couple of babies, on the way. I did everything to keep, so it's tough. So I had a bad year last year, and then this year I had a little bit of a health issue early on during the year that took me offline for a while, and it was right in the time when my snakes were laying and breeding. And I literally, I was too ill actually to my daughter to come and help me. So I had snakes that laid, and I ate their eggs. I had others, by the time I got here, the eggs were dried. It was really a pretty terrible year. So I'm like, oh my goodness. So
Yeah.
hey, life happens.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, and I was, we were talking about your timeline within the reptile world. About 40 years of, working with reptiles. What's the major change you think you've seen in those 40 years within the reptile world?
Very, very, very simply, when I started, I was in South Africa, and basically a teenager, I would go out, and growing up in South Africa was like, a reptile person's dream.
Yeah,
So, we could go out and we would catch a lot of wild caught. There was no captive breeding, number one, so absolutely nothing. And then I was fortunate. I started at a reptile park, a reptile zoo called the Transvaal Snake Park. And we bred the first Angolan pythons in captivity in the world. We've hatched the first Southern African dwarf pythons. Some of the venomous stuff, I'm sure we were some of the first breeders to breed, forest cobras in captivity, Norzamana luca, and so I was very fortunate that I was able to plug into, working with Austin Stevens, which some people may know Austin from his National Geographic and his shows, and a guy called Carl Heinz Swittek, who was one of the pioneers in the green tree python world. Carl actually worked for National Geographic. For running surf. So basically I worked with these guys, and I learned, because there was no internet, as I mentioned. We had to learn by trial and error, and we had to, for instance, even incubators, we literally made wooden boxes and we put a light bulb in there, and we kept the light bulb on, and we did toilet tissue and water, and some eggs went off, and we figured out next year we'd change it, and then eventually we started hatching. I remember our first clutch of ball pythons, just normals, captive. We hatched one egg. We were over the moon. So today, I don't think you guys appreciate what you've got. It's like, you got channels and social media, and you can, and there's people, and now it's global as well. We were there were, I know there were guys in the US, but there was no captive breeding, and the professionalisms, now we see the organizations like US ARC as well. Again, it's definitely great, and it's going to, if you look at where I heard you talking to, I watched some of your old podcasts, and I watched your interview with Jeff, which was great, and and then you one with John from Phantom Hogs, and then John, great guys there. He was talking about where the industry's going, and I totally agree. It's just going to continue to improve. Newer keepers will come on, and we're always learning new things. So it's been you can't believe, it's like any area of the world. You look at 40 years ago, you can't think, man, we were so out of it and bad then. Now we know so much.
Yeah.
But we were doing our best at the time. We was cutting edge, man.
It was, and I think a big thing about that, and within you're back then, and you're still somewhat involved in the reptile world now, is basically like anything, like technology, keeping up with the times and being able to learn the new stuff. Because I do believe there are some people that are very stuck in a certain rhythm, a certain way, and don't want to try new methods or want to try the new information.
Sure. And you got to stay humble. You still got to. So I've moved around a lot. I've lived in 5 different countries, and I've traveled all over the world. And as I've moved, I've had to. I've sold up my collection. In about 2005, I left the US and moved to Europe. And Brian Barczyk, late Brian was a good friend of mine, and Brian actually took a lot of my collection and kept them in his facility until I was established, sent them to me. And then when I got my green card, I sold it for a bunch in the UK, and then moved to US. I had to start again. And so I've seen new people come and go, along the way. and some of those early guys I worked with, like Brian, and obviously, Brian Sharp, Boas, I don't, Brian's and Peter Cole, who, the Cole albino Boas, and Ian Nasdowski at Albert Reptiles, Ralph Davis, he's no longer in the industry. So a lot of those early guys, some of them are, either passed on, or, they're no longer keeping reptiles, or they just, you see people there for a couple of years and all of a sudden they're gone. I think that, this is a sort of a hobby for life. And now I'm teaching my grandchildren, and they love snakes. And so it's, hey, Pop, where's my snake? And, and I put their name. And, as my daughters both grew up with snakes, that's all they knew, So
that's great. That's great to hear, because I have two daughters. The same thing, growing up with them, their hands pretty much hands-on with, feedings, the cleanings and stuff like that. My oldest daughter is going to have her first breeding next year.
Oh, cool.
So, I'm really I'm going to be hands off and see how she does, with that. So I'm really looking forward to that. When you first started, how old were you? Do you remember when you were working for the parks?
Yeah, so I was about 14, I think, when I was a little bit, I got my first sort of, it was called a scalp stick. It's basically the equivalent of a garter snake, I guess, in South Africa. And then when I started going to the Transvaal Snake Park on my weekends, and I had a job to clean out cages. So, I mean, to me, it was I would have done it for free, but they paid me. Yeah. And they used to buy snakes because they were actually milking snakes professionally for South African Institute of Medical Research, and they produce a polyvalent anti-serum in South Africa. So we would go out, and where we lived, there was a snake called a rinkos. A rinkos, it's like a false, like a banded cobra, but it's not the Latin name is Hemachatus, and it actually spits venom, but it's not actually a true cobra because it's got keeled scales. Any case, so the rinkos, I would catch them where I lived. I was 15 years old.
I heard that you were 14 years old. They used to catch them.
Yeah. And then I used to take them to the park and sell them to them. And I used to work at this park, which was a lot of fun. And then I started there professionally. On the weekends, I started giving public demonstrations, actually extracting venom from puff adders and gaboon vipers, and a whole variety of cobras and mambas. It was pretty wild, all the stuff we had available. I was probably about 19 then. And then in my early 20s, I moved to Germany, and I worked for Venom Lab in Germany. I came in as their expert herpetologist. That was my full-time job. It was my first job. I was a professional herpetologist. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah. And starting working with venomous at such a young age too. I think that's very interesting, because at least in Florida here now, you need to have so many working hours per species to work with venomous and stuff. Looking back at that time frame working with venomous, what would you say to your 19-year-old self?
Don't. You work with venomous snakes a lot. At some stage, you're probably going to get tagged. And I've had 4 venomous bites.
Wow.
And every time it was my own fault. I was bitten by a cobra, 2 cobras. I had a puff adder bite. That was my worst bite. Bitus aritans, it's a cytotoxic venom. My whole arm was swollen, and in the lymphatic glands, it was pretty bad. And then I was bitten by a little berg adder. It's a small adder you find in South Africa in the mountains. It's got a neurotoxic poison, which is interesting for an adder, Bitus atropus. And but that was I was, it hadn't eaten its food, and I thought, I haven't got time for the tongs. I was clean and I had a lot, so I put my hand in it. You just get stupid, so you learn. So I would just say, if you're young, and
see, we should get him back.
Good. I think it's good.
So you were saying you cut out a little bit. If you're young,
oh, sorry.
Yeah. You were saying if you're young and you're working with venomous.
Well, I think you've got to have good mentors. to stop you from making mistakes. Remember, I worked in a professional facility, and it was there. We didn't have a lot of laws, etc. But I worked with good people, so if I'd listened to them, I would have been okay.
Yeah.
When you're young and dumb, you make
Yeah.
stupid mistakes, and you learn.
Oh, for sure. For the important part is you learn, right?
Yeah.
And then talking about venomous, and it just came up to me right now, and I'm not gonna name the person because I don't want to give more issues, but I don't know if have you heard of that person in South Carolina that got bitten by the taipan?
Yes.
Yeah.
Crazy.
What's on people like that have venomous? What are your thoughts on
Well,
that?
first of all, you don't keep venomous unless you have the serum on hand. If you have a medical emergency and you don't have the serum, you could potentially die. And even if you go to hospital, it's really dangerous. So I only worked with venomous where we had, I was bitten in Germany. I was actually bitten by an Asian cobra, monocle cobra in Germany. Now, that's a Southeast Asian snake. We had all the serum. I had to go to the. I was actually milking the snake, and it bit me on my finger. Fortunately, it wasn't a bad bite, but you never know with the bites how much venom they've given or not. So I had to go to hospital. I'm in intensive care there. The doctors are kind of freaked out because they knew that they worked with us at the reptile park, but we had to see them. But I had to explain to them in my bad German and their bad English what was happening and what to look out for.
Yeah.
I do not advise it.
Yeah.
Somebody was looking out for me. I survived.
No, that's good. That's good. But it's good because like saying these conversations from a person that has the experience, that has had, the bites and stuff, is good that maybe your advice might save somebody's life one day too, as well, if they listen to this. And, and right when, what I've heard from some venomous keepers is that it's not if you've been bitten, is when will you be bitten?
To be honest, I don't know. The professionals that I worked with, everybody, just about most people had been tagged at one stage or another. And again, it's like, and again, it's sometimes it's just, how often do you get bitten by, if you're keeping, any kind of snakes? Hogs don't really bite. I mean, like they can do, but some snakes are a little bit more aggressive. Now, if you're working with some venomous species, mambas, for instance, I would not advise anybody to, and so if there's venomous keepers here, but black mambas to me do not belong in a private collection, or taipans, unless you're highly experienced and, you've got all the protocols in place. They're fast snakes, they're big snakes, they're aggressive. Green mambas are cool. I really love them. They're really, all the different species, but blacks are nasty. They're I shouldn't say they're nasty. Let's put it, they're nervous snakes, and because they're nervous, they are difficult to handle. It's like large constrictors. It's not everybody who can keep a 20-foot plus animal and manage it safely. That's the cool thing about hogs. They're small. Everybody can keep them.
Yes, I agree with that. So after you left that Venom Lab in Germany, is that when you stopped working with venomous?
Yes, pretty much so. So I had I mentioned to you, I might have mentioned in the background, but I did this crazy stunt. I sat in a snake cage for 69 days with venomous snakes. It was a world record at the time. It was stupid. I was young and poor, and I wanted to go to the Amazon. So I was raising money through the zoo, and I got a percentage of the gate money to go to the Amazon. So I got on a yacht. I sailed from South Africa, went to South America. And then I stayed on the yacht. I never went there, but it was a long story. But yeah, when I got married, I met my wife, got married, moved back to South Africa. I was invited to go to Australia to work with venomous. So the snakes went from my profession at that stage into like a hobby on the back end.
Okay.
And then years later, I jumped back into, always kept animals, always had snakes. But then around about 2000, when I moved to the US, I basically went into breeding, had it, built up. I had over 1,000 snakes at one stage. I had 1,000 ball pythons. Where's my boas, my carpet pythons in the early 2000s. So
yeah.
Yeah. being
And
busy.
that's very interesting, with like now you're talking about like in 2000s with having ball pythons and being from South Africa with the ball pythons. Did you ever think ball pythons were going to get to where they are?
No, no. I mean, if you look today, I think I just did a quick check on World of Ball Pythons. Now I thought, I wonder how many morph combos there are. Because when I started, it was in ball pythons. It was pastels and ghosts, axanthics, clowns, and albinos. But that was it. I mean, it was proven combos. And every year we'd see 2 or 3 more, and then pinstripes came out, and Kevin and Nerd got the spiders, and and then Brian was getting stuff. Ian from Outback was importing a lot of stuff, and we get a lot of what we call dinker projects, trying to prove them out. And yellow bellies. I mean, when yellow bellies were new, most people couldn't even identify them. And then Emir in Miami, went and bred the ivories. We said, wow, this is pretty cool. And, we were sort of growing. But now you look, I think there was like over 7,000 base morph combos. 7,000. Wow. I mean, that's so. And people often say, well, where's the hog market going? Well, I always say, look at the ball python market. 4, 5, 6 gene animals will become common, and then we will also find a lot of these polymorphic animals starting to come in, and epistatus, when one gene affects another one, you get this weird combo being produced. We've got a long way to go in the hog market, but ball pythons are amazing, and they're worldwide.
Yes. There's very very limited like laws or regulations against keeping ball pythons worldwide. So that's another thing that makes it a very popular animal too.
Well, they're passive. They're passive as well. And people they're not, and they're like, ball python. If you got to have a perfect python, it's a ball python. From a pet point of view, I'm talking about. I mean, I love carpet pythons and green tree pythons. I worked for a lot of chondros and carpets at one stage. I had Timor pythons, I love them, but they get big, and with ball pythons, I've got a 16-year-old ball python, only one ball python, Patch, and he's a blue-eyed leucistic. I think you had the image on, when you promoted this. Yeah. I've had Patch for about 16 years now, and when he was born, he was the first epic pastel super special in the world. In any case, doesn't matter, it's like history. But he's such a passive snake. I've taken him into schools, and all the kids handle him, and I have no problem with a retic, well, probably some of them you can, but I know Patch is not going to bite anybody.
Correct. Yeah and you made a good point where like, where is the hognose market going, right? Do you think there's a point of too many genes in one animal?
The challenge with the genes, and I think that some of your previous guests may have alluded to this, is that there's a lot of guesswork involved when you get multiple genes. And you also, when you buy animals in, you think you know what you're getting, but some breeders, forget that there's pos hex in there. So all of a sudden you're breeding something and you produce an animal when there's 4 or 5 genes or 6 genes involved. And you think, what on earth have I just got? And I've seen people produce stuff in different species, and I won't name the people, because they were carrying hits and for something else and claim a new mutation and stuff, and then only realize, oh crap, later, this is not a new morph at all. It's actually, these things are all hit for ghost or something, and it looks like that. But I think as far as the health of the animal goes, I don't believe, it depends on the gene, and obviously the more people line breed animals, you can get harmful mutations building up in the population. So as long as you have good, you outcross, you add new blood in, and you're cognizant of that. And if you buy from disparate breeders, so you've got a healthy bloodline, and of course we know it's sort of bad genes. You kind of see them pop up, but when it's when you get people who, I've seen ball pythons born, with one, and albinos, with one eye, and undercut,
The shark mouth. Yeah.
shark
Yeah.
mouth. There you go. Yeah,
Yeah.
but so that's that. Hey, you're inbreeding too much, dude. Just
Mm-hmm.
outbreed and outcross, etc. But snakes are, for dogs. We've domesticated dogs and cats for thousands of years, and but you do find with inbred depression and a lot of these mutations that become harmful, particularly ones that are not expressed. In snakes, we're all about the pattern and the color mutations. That's really all we want to think about. But there's also other mutations that animals can carry that are internal mutations that can be harmful.
Yeah.
So you just got to be aware of that.
Yeah. And what I was alluding to is you touched the topic of, how many genes does it take to, to start guessing of what's available and what's in there. And what I've seen a lot too in hognose is a lot of combinations because of the base coloring of a hognose.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them start leaning towards the pinkish colors.
Yeah.
Right. And one thing I've said with hognose is how many pink combos of hognose are we gonna make? And look, I'm a lover of hognose, and that's what I have. Yeah. But I think, eventually we're gonna reach a point where, like, all right, if there's albino in it, it's gonna be red or pink. Especially once you start adding all those different color mutations. I had that problem this year. I bred a 100% het permafrost male, so sable, hypo, het, sable, hypo, and caramel, to a 66% permafrost female, and I got sunburst. And I was like, I looked at it, I was like, what in the world am I looking at? At first, I thought I labeled one of my albino clutches under that pairing. I was like, because all the first like 4 or 5 eggs I pipped, they were all albino. And I was like, dang, did I label this wrong? I messed this one up. And then I saw a sable pop on. I was like, okay, no, it's this pairing. I guess they're het albinos. Yeah.
It's, I mean, just with this year I produced Condor Mercuries, and beautiful. But man, you get in, they come out the eggs, you think, well, hang on, what have I got here? And my lavender Condor line is I don't know if there's another gene in there or something. Honestly, it's because it's like they're all patternless almost. I produce some really. I know Eslan does as well. And in fact, I got one of my original lavenders from Eslan. Eslan's a good guy. Shout out to him.
Yeah,
cool
yeah.
So, but they are very difficult. So I'm a little bit confused with some of them that I've actually produced, and I'm thinking, well, what? And I'm just going to hold them all back because I'm not quite certain exactly what some of them are. So that's a challenge with a lot of the, if you haven't produced it more before, and there's multiple genes, and then you get some of the parents that are carrying some of those polygenetic genes, pastel. Which can, RB pastel can display sometimes bright and sometimes, less bright. And things like jaguars, again, another polygenetic morph. I'm just thinking of all the others out there. Obviously, true hypos, lemon goats, womas, etc. Throw those in the mix when you got 2 or 3 genes. It's really can be challenging. But on the pink ones, just to go back to your original point, I think some people love the pink snakes.
Yeah, they do.
And if you've got you can improve them by adding deeper reds or purple lines. That really makes nice animals pop. But I do a bunch of pink pastel stuff, and I like the pink pastel gene. I don't have any regular albinos anymore. I only have pink pastels. And I did that deliberately. I kind of got out of my albinos because I didn't want to get them confused. I was going to make electrics. I thought, I sold them off.
No, I get it. Yeah, they're very close. I haven't gotten into the PPA project, but I see them at Eslin's projects and stuff like that. And they're very unique looking. Once you see, especially when you see them in person, there's
Very much
definitely a
so.
difference between the albino and the PPA. I mean, exactly what the name says. They're pink pastels because they're not the deep reds or the high like bright pinks. It has that nice pastel
Yeah.
color to them, so they're
You
really
sh-
cool.
every time, I love it when I've shipped pink pastels, and Arctic PPAs, and
Hmm.
Conda PPAs, and super Arctics. People get them, and every time, almost 100% without fail, I get this message: "Wow, John, this thing looks way better in person. Thank you
Yeah,
so much." It's like, yeah, I know. I told you so. They're like lavenders. Lavenders, I mean, I battle, to take good photos of lavenders.
yes.
Um,
I think you and everyone else. We need to find the secret to taking pictures of the
well,
lavenders.
I somebody told me online, and I'm sorry I can't remember the person's name, but it
Hmm.
was quite useful. They said, hey, just keep them cool. Don't put them in the fridge. But I know people have done that before when they take photos of lizards, stop them running away. But that's a different
Hmm.
story. But keep them cool, because they do start off darker, and they sort of, they're flamed up and then they flame down, if
Hmm.
you're talking about geckos, and they sort of, the color turns a bit brown, which is
And also another good thing about maybe keeping them cool is that they don't move as much either. Too, they slow down a little bit.
you know, I worked with a guy, I mentioned his name earlier, Carl Heinz Swedek. Some of the old guys may know. Carl produced the first green tree pythons in captivity. And I think triple wash, actually Gordy snakes. Carl wrote for National Geographic, and he went to New Guinea, and he brought back a gravid female, and she
Hmm.
laid, and so. But in any case, Carl, when I worked in South Africa, and Carl would come by, and he was taking photos for National Geographic. He worked at Steinhardt Academy of Science in San Francisco. And he said, "Yeah, we're going to take photos of these lizards." I said, "Well, how are you going to do that?" And she built this little set, and he's like, with grass. It just looked like it was out in the wild. And he said, "Oh, a trick." So we got the lizard. He put it in a little Tupperware, like
Hmm.
plastic container, Rubbermaid, and put it in the fridge, not the freezer. What are you doing? He said, "No, you watch." After a few minutes, takes out this lizard's cold, this gecko, and he set it down, and he kind of lifted it, and it just sat there, and he's click, 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 the big Hasselblad cameras,
Yeah,
and then they warm up and they run away.
yeah,
I
very,
don't
yeah,
recommend.
yeah. And we have a question here. JQ Ball Pythons asking about the Jedi and Yoda gene. That how come not many people are working with it? And he's saying because he has both.
you know, uh, I basically, the Jedi gene was something. I think it's basically very similar. It's like a spectre almost, but a lower level spectre. And I, at the time after we defined the morph, and I had a couple of people working with it, I got out of ball pythons. So I didn't. It's like, if you start a project, it's not the person who finds that morph and works with it, that tries all the different combos, and sables. Dan Eby got in and
Hmm.
produced every sable times everything you can, I think. Um, and Brent did exactly the same with Conda. So I initial moves, and so I passed it off to other people. So I don't know why they didn't run with the project. It's a pretty cool gene, and they just didn't do enough with it, I think. But I've seen some, and then I've seen other genes. The chance with ball pythons. And again, this is no disrespect to any ball python guys, but I think there's a lot of the similar genes that are called the same gene, same mutation, or color trait, or pattern trait, that is given multiple names by different breeders. And they want to claim it as something new, and it's actually not true. So I think Jedi's are being named something else. But I'm not up to date with. I look at ball pythons occasionally, but I'm not up to date as much as I should be with it. I mean, I love all the clown count combos. I think they're great. Some of the, but I look at things like Ozzy's doing, and I know Ozzy when he started with the
The
with
Orange Dream.
the or I had Orange Dreams at the same time as him. We both got them from Ian Nasdalski. And again, that's why he took it and he proved it out and he named it Orange Dreams. So, and I knew I had exactly the same thing. And then he bred it and, and he made it his own. And so he ran with it. And that's one example of what I should have done with the Jedi. So, there's, it's out there. The Jedi's a good gene. It just needs to be worked with into other animals. And I don't know what it'll do or what it won't do.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask you. If you still had ball pythons with what's out right now, is there a specific morph or combo you would put Jedi into?
If I still had it, when you look at if you look at some of the most spectacular that Justin's doing, what the most spectacular ball pythons are 4, 5, 6 gene animals. I would try and throw it into something that complement. I would put it in, I see how it goes with red stripe, GHI. We actually put them with GHIs, if I remember back in the day, GHIs and pastels, and they produce some pretty interesting stuff. But man, it's, with when you compare I don't know how many base morphs there are on ball pythons now, but there's a couple of hundred. It's like You just don't know what you're going to get. You're mixing not just paint jobs, you're mixing patterns and paint jobs. So it's really something. I would look at stream and maybe, but I would definitely if I had I would mix a stranger GHI. Red stripes, I think will produce something pretty interesting. And I would throw some color in there, like the I think it was some hypos would be great with it. I mean, even Desert Ghost, pretty cool. It's, there's just so much to do. And I'm speculating here because I honestly don't know what it will produce and kick out.
Yeah. And then the Yoda, because I'm not, I'm very distant and not in too much in touch with like ball python genetics and stuff. Is Yoda another genetic within that same time type?
Yeah, it was the same. We caught it, we saw it was something different. We produced it basically reproduced first generation. And but again, I got out, I hardly did anything with the Yodas. I just had them, tried them, bred them, and then passed the whole project on. And I was working with some guys, down in Florida, some ball python. And I honestly, I had a couple of guys who came when I was selling out of ball pythons. They came around, and it was like, it was a bit like, like a Black Friday sale. I had people just swarming in and buying stuff. So I lost track of who was buying what and racks and everything. So yeah, I just don't know.
Yeah, and what was the decision behind getting out of the ball pythons, especially for the breedings?
So basically, when I moved to the US, I mentioned I have a tech career as well. I work for a large company called Symantec, largest cybersecurity vendor in the world, and I would spend a lot of time having to fly over to Silicon Valley, and I came in on what's called an H-1B visa. So I started their offices for them in South Africa, in Dubai, in the Middle East, and I was running around there. So I was breeding snakes, but I was spending a lot of time flying on airplanes at the time. So it was really difficult with my job as well as the snakes to keep them both. And then I left the company, basically went through an acquisition, bought another company, and the division I was in was a global business development group, which I headed, was closed down. So I found myself without a job, and I'm here on a visa that's tied to a company. So we moved to, kicked into the ball pythons big time, grew my business, started breeding. And then I get a call from my immigration attorney, and he says, "Hey, John, you've got a problem." I said, "What's that?" He said, "Well, you're basically illegally in the country." Of course, today I wouldn't bother, I'd just stay. But I'm a law-abiding guy, and I've got a young family and stuff. So
yeah.
Oh, crap, man. So we were living out in Loxahatchee, close to Ronson Pier, and if you know where the perfect prey guys are, close up there. Had a beautiful place, a pool, big breeding stuff. We sold it all up. Go on a plane. And then I sent some snakes to Brian, and we flew to the UK, and then when I got my green cards, we came back. I mean, I've given away. I mean, I could have been so far ahead. I was early into
Yeah.
ball pythons, man. We had some pretty good stuff. Same with boas. I mean, I was breeding boas and green teas. Had coffee, the coffee green tree pythons, the yellow ones.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I had a beautiful pairs of those. I got them in the early days, and Ben Siegel was getting hold of some, and I was buying it from him. I said, "Whatever you get, I'll buy, Ben." And when I moved to the UK, I gave them all to Brian Barczyk. I said, "Hey, to take them to Europe." So I had to get out of them, and my loss, his gain.
Yeah. And and that's interesting because of, like you said, sometimes life happens, and with animals is not the easiest sometimes, just get up and go.
No.
And obviously I guess when you get back to the US, that had to stick with you and in your mind, and you never did you ever regrow your collection as big?
So, but my focus changed. I was pretty much so when I moved to Europe. I'd been over before when I was traveling on business. I went to Ham, the Ham show there, and my first book was out. I wrote. I don't know if you've seen. So this was my first book.
I haven't seen that one.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. This was. It's the layout's crappy, but it was a good book. I mean, it's got carpet pie. It was the first morph book written. I wrote this about the same time Kevin, from Nerd, wrote his. And I think mine came out first. And we sold out all. I was amazed at how people wanted this. Basically, Brian Barczyk got hold of. We were talking one day, and he said, we said we need a cookbook. So I said, what do you mean? He said, yeah, And so I wrote down essentially how to breed them all. That's where the whole idea came from. And then Stefan in Germany, Stefan Brockheimer, he did his book, etc. But this one was pretty cool. So in any case, I go to Europe and I'm at Ham, and I met Michelle Klompers. Michelle does a lot of the caramel stuff in Europe, and Philippe, who breeds like a gazillion hogs, got a lot of his stuff from I think at that stage from Michelle. So Michelle says to me, "Hey John, you need to get into hognoses." And he starts talking about. I said, "Go away! I'm not interested in hognoses." I'd seen him at Ben's place, and it was like one or two albinos were out and axanthics, and then I met the guy, some RBE, Ramo, and I forget the other dude's name. Don't tell him that. They're no longer, and they produced the first toffee bellies, and then they got the Arctics, from Jeff, etc. But it was like early days, and they were just starting to come out and appear. And the stuff in the US, obviously, a lot of it have been here. Hypos out, pink pastels. It took a long while for Brian to get that gene established, but I basically started getting into hogs. And so I had some of my boas. I had my own line of blood boas, berry blood boas, which again, not many people know, but in Europe they're pretty well established because I sold a lot of them over there. I just decided, I'm going to focus on the hogs because I love these little guys too much. Because while I was over there, I wrote the first book, and I went and visited a lot of the breeders in Europe, and it's a company called Eurorep in the UK, and they produce basically thermostats, so like Exoterra, I guess, but they've been doing it longer and over there. And Stuart, and I can't remember Stuart's last name, but Stuart had, have you seen the Phoenix line of, they're like Raging Reds?
Yes, yeah.
So he actually started them, and then another guy got him and called him Phoenix line. But, he had this big collection of hogs, actually. And Roger Putras, with the P-type Jaguars. Roger's a mate of mine. We both worked in South Africa in the early days. He was from Reptile Pop, but he and I actually started. We decided to call them, Jaguars together. Justin had just named them, and then we found them in the UK. So I really was getting into these hogs. Man, hogs are awesome. So I started keeping them, and I thought, okay, it's time to focus now. So I let the ball. That was a hard thing, and then just pure hogs.
Nice. And like I said, that's where I heard of you, and discovered about you was through the hognose world, because that's my world. That's what I have, and that's what I keep. Ball pythons were cool, but didn't draw me enough to start a breeding project.
Well, you're very late. Sorry, not late, but if you look at in technology, we have basis technology adoption life cycle,
Mm-hmm.
and you have the early adopters, and then it kind of goes up to this early majority, and then eventually, so we're on the late majority. There's a
Mm-hmm.
long tail for technology, and it's exactly the same with snakes. So we're on this long late adopted cycle. So if you get into ball pythons now and you think it's cutting edge, man, where have you been, under a rock or something?
Correct.
So everybody, they've spread around the world now. There's thousands of mutations,
Mm-hmm.
proven base morphs and mutations, and there's a lot of breeders, and all the issues have been worked out. Hogs are lagging that. So and obviously carpet pythons went through a big stage, and retics. If you could go in a time machine back to Daytona, so 20 years ago, you're going to see a ton of retics and a ton of berms, and ball pythons will sort of be where hogs are today.
Okay. Yeah. That's and that's what I tell people is, um, I got I say I got lucky because sometimes it's luck that the hog nose is what really drew me in, because like you said, we're at that point where there's still genes being discovered, rarely, often. We're still just scratching the surface of 3 and 4 gene animals. So it's really cool to see that, and you still have time to be able to work those projects and still be, your projects be relevant, instead of basically, I always say, like, the chasing the rat race of, this was produced, and by the time you produce it, there's 3 5 other things you produce it in the ball python world, correct? So.
Yeah, I think that what people do they need to focus a bit more, because it's a much bigger market, and you don't need to have this massive. It's great if if you've got the time and you're full time. I only have a small collection now,
Mm-hmm.
because as I mentioned to you, I have a crypto startup, but I've been working on for a couple of years, and we're actually getting really busy. We're actually entering like the X factor of crypto at the moment in Singapore, and if we win that, we're going to be really happy. But if we don't, we learned a lot. But I don't have time. I literally don't have time, to look after 1,000 snakes anymore. So
Yeah.
I've literally, I've got a couple of hundred. It's not a lot. But if you're keeping snakes and hogs, my suggestion to people who focus on the quality rather than the quantity, and keep what you enjoy. And also, rather than just gain a little bit of this, focus on one or two. Either I'm going to work with caramel and axanthic. Get your hypos and produce. There's a lot of stuff in the camel gene, or rather stick to a family. Like I said, I don't do albinos. It's not because they're crappy at all. It's just everyone's doing albinos, and so
Mm-hmm.
I sort of went. That's why I jumped back when I started to pick it up again. I jumped back into the PPAs and the lavenders and axanthics, and there are enough just with the genes that I'm working with that improve the quality of the projects I've got. The other thing, of course, is remember, snakes are they're not that difficult to breed. This is not rocket science. We can, you can, as you said, your daughter, did you say, is it your daughter who's going to be breeding snakes?
Yes, my daughter. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, how old is she?
She's be 14 this week.
14. Okay, so I mean, you can even in younger. What my daughter was, I don't know, I think about 11 when she started breeding corns and crested geckos, and she bought her first car by breeding and selling her own reptiles, which was pretty cool.
Great.
Yeah, I said, come on, you can do it. And she did, and it was also in the UK. But if you, it's not rocket science. The challenge is not the breeding. It's what are you going to do when you get them, because
Yes.
if you have a really good year and these animals can double clutch and produce a lot of offspring, all of a sudden you better have the time to look after them and keep them well, and because there's nothing worse than producing animals and not being able to look after them, and then people crash the market, just sell them off and dump them on the market. So I think it's just all common sense, basically.
Yeah, and like we were talking about earlier, we're in the world in the age where like, if you're not marketing yourself, you're dead in the water.
Sure.
Everything's moving so fast at this point that, if you're not staying ahead of the curve in, putting yourself out there, with projects, you're gonna fall behind a lot quicker than you would 10, 20 years ago. So I think that's very important. You made a good point. Is many people can breed reptiles. Is what are you gonna do with them when you have all those babies on hand? You know.
Yeah. You also the way I think about this is the market. The markets we call it. It's like a pyramid. Okay, you got a very few high-end buyers at the top who are going to buy. That's the breeders. So the new stuff, the new morph comes out.
Mm-hmm.
When the Swiss came out, Swiss chocolates. They wanted the game. When Philip did his skull face, I wanted to get those animals, and everybody wants to get in on cinnamons and whatever. But that's expensive animals. Those guys are not letting them go cheaply.
Yeah.
But there's not a lot of people to sell to there. And then it
Yep.
goes down at the base. You've got the pet trade, where you're selling to pet stores and you're
Mm-hmm.
wholesaling. So there's levels in between. Nowhere you're going to useful is local shows. Today you can sell. Morph Market is I think it's a great platform, but it's a little bit of a victim of its own success, where it's almost we probably if a competitor leapt up that offered a similar type product, I think they'll be successful.
Yeah.
But then local shows, there's a lot of local shows. Go to local shows. They're a good place to go and meet people face to face, talk to them. I've met some incredibly interesting, great people, and people I didn't even know, or people I've only met online and never actually met them face to face. So I was writing my books. I spoke to all sorts of breeders and keepers all over the world. And some of them I've never actually met in person, but others, I've met them at shows and they're great people and we got on well. So they're also good venues to sell snakes, even some of the small shows, but don't think you're going to go with this 5 gene animal and sell it at a small show,
No.
That's more of the pet shop, all the
Yeah.
lower end,
Yeah.
condo.
It's interesting, because last year I produced corals, Arctic corals, Arctic lavenders and stuff like that, and I would take the corals to local shows. I knew that I wasn't going to sell them, but they were a showstopper, and it will make people to stop and look.
Yes.
And then I had, the pet priced animals, the albino condas, the Arctic albino anacondas and stuff like that. That one animal allowed people to stop and look,
Yeah.
and then purchase stuff for that. And I agree. Not everybody can be the high end, hognose or ball python breeder or
Hey,
whatever.
we can't all be Jeff.
Yeah.
Hey, Jeff. I don't know if he's on or not, but
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, we all can't be like you said, there's I would say there's a top 5 or even maybe even top 3, breeders that are regularly selling those very
Sure.
high end animals.
But
Um,
if you produce high-end animals, you can. I mean, I've seen that. You can do pretty well with them if you produce high-end animals. And if you're fortunate enough to produce a pied hognose or something brand new, you're gonna have people knocking on your
yes.
door, and
Yes. Yeah.
it's gonna be pretty crazy. Um, but I think with the hog to shows, don't ever underestimate low end animals.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody starts off somewhere, and you start off. I know a lot of people, they start off with 1 or 2 low end, or a dad goes there and buys an animal for their kid. And the
Yes.
next minute, the bug bites them, and then they're buying, and all of a sudden they're going. Marcus
Yeah.
Jane up in Canada, he's a big ball python guy. I think he started off by getting the animal for his daughter or something.
Yeah.
And now he's
That's
got
how
this
we
massive full-time
that's
collection.
how it got. Yeah, that's how it happened with us too as
Oh,
well.
there you go. Good
Yeah.
example. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I had reptiles growing up. I went to the military, so I couldn't have
Okay.
any while I was there, and then never, I never got back into it into my daughters, and that opened the floodgates.
Yeah.
All the memories, all the stuff about having reptiles and animals when I was young, opened the floodgates, and we're here today. So yeah, that's how it starts, and I agree with that. I was in the sales world in before, after getting out the military and now before doing Hognose, and they always, one main thing that the top salesman always told us was, treat every customer that walks by like he's going to spend $1 million, because you never know who that customer is, who that person is walking through that store or walking
Yeah.
up to your counter. He might spend $1 million. He doesn't look like it, but he might spend $1 million worth of materials.
And people become repeat customers. People you
Mm-hmm.
meet at shows are great. Repeat customers, and what you're doing with these programs are great.
Mm-hmm.
If people, Instagram is a great platform. Obviously, I see
Yes.
Jeff's doing stuff. I don't know what he's doing on Discord, but I know that
Mm-hmm.
from the tech world. There's other channels.
Mm-hmm.
There's Telegram and there's WhatsApp. In the tech world, I'm on every platform whatsoever.
Yeah.
And writing blogs and articles and stuff. It's a never ending awareness information world, and you've got to remember we're competing at this time. The people watching here could be watching Netflix. So you've got
Correct.
to produce something that's quality, and it's all part of. So you've got to brand yourself, market yourself. Don't think I'm going to get in, just produce 100 animals, and buy a Lambo tomorrow. It's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
You got
So all hognose breeders and ball python breeders don't have a Lambo in their garage. You're telling us?
Well, not in my. If they do, they didn't get it out of the snakes.
That's cool.
Well, I think
Yeah.
Philip's probably got one or two.
Yeah. 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 He sold a lot of hognose to get those.
It's funny, when I wrote my first Hognose book, he was, he came along. He was like, "Why the last guys added into it?" He didn't have such a big collection. He was just going and buying and growing it, and over
Mm-hmm.
the last sort of 12 years, he's really ramped up. He's done pretty well, and I think he sends a lot to Asia as well, and
Mm-hmm.
the Asian market is Asian market. Even I remember Daytona in the early 2000s, we'd have these guys arrive from Japan at Daytona. They'd walk around, and we had, and they would, "Oh, so how much is this?" And they would,
Mm-hmm.
and you tell them, and then they'd whip out cash. Okay,
Yeah.
that's like $20,000, and my wife's
Yeah.
counter behind the table there. It's the
That's
first one in
great.
the world. We want it.
Yeah.
I think that market disappeared. I think people just export them, over there now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's what they're looking for. They're looking for those world first. They're looking for those really high end gene animals.
Yeah,
But at this time, you need to have those connections, and a lot of those connections, like you said, were built back in the Daytona time frame.
yeah. And it
You
was
know.
before the internet, so
Mm-hmm.
before Instagram existed. So there was
Mm-hmm.
no. I mean, I was actually quite late onto social media, even though I've been in tech. For pretty much when I started in selling software in
Mm-hmm.
early 90s.
Okay.
So I've sort of seen the internet grow up. I've been involved, and my kids tell me that's what keeps me young, because I sort of jumped into Bitcoin and crypto early as well, and built some startups there, and um, I've sort of chased that, but I didn't jump into social media early, because I actually wrote a book on privacy and cybersecurity, because that was like my niche
Mm-hmm.
market. And so I was always worried about, I hate censorship. And so I really didn't take advantage of the platforms to promote my snakes. But today, I
Yeah.
mean, you sit there and, you can be on any social media, TikTok. I mean, we haven't even mentioned that yet today.
Yeah.
I'm pretty certain there's a lot of people using that successfully to reach the next generation and to reach people.
Mm-hmm.
You got to do it. Jump in there, man. If you're going to breed animals, get out there. And again, the market, there's a lot of untapped potential in our market. We need to bring new people in.
Yes.
We need to get all those ball python people. We need to convert them as well.
Yeah. And it's happening. It definitely is happening. I've met in Dallas. I met someone that is in that process right now. Little by little, shrinking their ball python, what's it called, collection, and going hognose and other colubrids. You know.
And we've only spoken about hogs because that's kind of our passion. But there are
Mm-hmm.
other. I mean, there's some people doing a lot of stuff in, and you also see sort of trends come and go.
Yes.
Where some of the rat snakes, the more exotic rat snakes, people are keeping those where they hadn't necessarily kept them in the past and having some success. But in general, I think hogs are reaching this tipping point where we've got enough proven base morphs. We've got enough combos. We've got enough knowledge as a community that as long as we not stupid and crash the market with pricing. We don't want to become the corn snake community. So, with all due respect to the corn snake guys, we can, and also, hogs have got an advantage over corns in that they're smaller. And yes. I'm sure you probably have noticed that there's a lot of females. The market used to be more male dominated, but in the lizard and the gecko industry, there's a lot of female, and I sell probably about half of my hogs or more I sell to females, which is great. They're like my daughters. Basically, I've got all daughters that are early 20 age, and a ton of them buy snakes. Now they're cute and they've got little turned up noses. So
yeah. You know what I say about that too is like the hobby, the community, the reptile community is going to get better because more females are joining it.
Absolutely. Sure.
And I say that now because I'm a girl. Like I said, I have daughters like you do. And I see the difference that women and girls make when they do something. It brings a different type of, not say niche, but different point of view.
Hey, we're probably going to get hate mail after this from some guys.
It's all right. That's all right.
I'm just kidding. Yeah. I'm a dad of 2 daughters, and I got a granddaughter who rules my life. So, nice. But there's always been like are you familiar? Tracy Barker, from VPI, absolutely brilliant, herpetologist, and Dave and Tracy bred many of the world's first in captivity snakes, and also when I was at Transfer Snake Pit, they were kind of doing the same thing over here in the US. They've always been women, but now I believe there's a higher percentage than before.
Yes, I agree.
Ever.
Yeah, and we touched a little bit here and there about the books. Your books. How many you have? 3 books written now?
Yeah. So I've actually gone here. This was my second one. My big bull python and boa book, and then I wrote the hognose one, and then I contributed to Rainbow Boa, or also Charmir, the same publisher in Germany, and I've written a bunch of articles, etc. I'm working on a new hognose book, and it's taken a while. I know people are a little bit, some of the guys sent me photos like, John, where's the book? It should have been out. It's like it's taken 2.5 years. So I had a lot of things happen. It's been a crazy 2.5 years. But it's so basically the text is finished. The text I finished, but the cover's done. The text was finished 2 years ago. And then I ran into a problem with my publisher. I had a little bit of I found my guys in Germany. I own I'm a little bit different the way I write books. I own the IP, and the copy. I don't just write the book and send me some royalties. I'll get involved and always like, hey, I'll split the printing costs. Or the hognose one, I basically paid. I outsourced the editing and the printing to the printer, but it was my book. But I found that I only do it in a hardcover. And I went to visit somebody in Florida, and they said, "Oh, can you sign your book?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." And they brought up the softcover book, and I'm like, "Where did you get this?"
Where
my printer had gone and they reprinted. They couldn't get hold of me. They said they did a whole print run, and kind of just stole from me basically. So, so we had a little bit of a falling out, and they never paid me. So I had to find a new printer, which is not the easiest thing to do. So I found another company. And I'm happy with the quality now. And then I wrote the book. But the hardest thing of writing the book is not the writing the book. I mean, I've actually written 5 books in total, and I've got a couple others in I do tech stuff as well.
Yeah.
But getting the photos, because I go to breeders and everyone says, yeah, we want to get photos in the books. And some of them like, I mean, Philip, you know, he's a cool dude, but man, he can't take photos to save his life. He sends me these photos. It looks like, you know, a 3-year-old took them. I mean, you know, like, come on, get a professional. Say,
like Philippe, hire a professional photographer.
He did eventually. And then he sent me some amazing photos. So I got all of the skull, I mean, all the great photos. And you get other people and they say, yeah, I'm going to send you photos. And they never do. And then you get, I mean, Eslan's great. He sent me a bunch of stuff. And, you know, Brent was great. He sent me a bunch of stuff. You know, Gary Morris in UK. And so I'm probably forgetting, you know, so I've got a lot of photos. But so what I do, I sort of write the book first. I got it all laid out and it's all great. And then I get the photos I've got and I'll sort of assign them. And then I go and look at the quality because, you know, you've got to convert them. They're going to be big enough. And sometimes they just don't work on the page layout. And this, I decided to do, probably a bit stupid, but I decided to do this all myself. You know, I'm a Mac guy. You know, I can do layouts. So I decided to do it all. So I get it all like halfway, and then I moved to Texas law. And then this year I got really ill. I had a really bad health issue that my family thought I was going to die, but I got over it. So I'm sort of a little bit behind, but now and a lot of those photos, I realized, man, I don't have the latest morph, so I've had to go back to people, and some people are resending me photos. You know, some like John, you know, Phantom Hog sent me a whole bunch of, so that's this alarm, sent me a whole bunch of photos of some of his new stuff, but it was about, 18 months ago, they were babies. Now those animals are grown up, so I kind of want to, I've been in the process of going to a bunch of people saying, hey, send me the new pictures, you know. Don't send me the ones of the baby and some of your new stuff because it's no good coming out with a book that's like 2 years out of date.
Correct.
So, sorry, that was a long explanation of but it will be. We're getting there.
Yeah.
The end is in sight.
You know, and, you know, so it's in the works. Do you have a timeline of when we should expect it being available?
I'm hoping to have it done by the end of the year.
Okay.
If I don't, it'll be Q1 next year. And I'm just, you know, so it's I say I've got a crypto project, and I'm working like crazy with my team on that as well, and
trying to balance out the two worlds. Yeah.
And you know, I've got family commitments, and you know, everyone says startups are wonderful. Yeah, it's the hardest thing you ever do in your life is do a tech startup and work with, you know, funders and VCs and, you know, angel investors and developers. I love and hate developers.
And then if your current book is, I was, you know, that's another thing. I couldn't get in my hold of your book.
It's out of print. But did you find one?
So I was at Eslan's place a few weeks ago, maybe about a month, sometime before Dallas. And he's going through some stuff, and I see your book. I was like, "You have his book?" I go, "Let me read. I need to read it." You know, and I picked it up. So, and I gotta say to you, very, very impressed with the layout, the information that's in there, the pictures. Very well put together book. You know, even you mentioned it to me. It's like, oh, it's outdated. Even though it's outdated, I still think, especially for the beginner, you know, the person that's getting into hognose, I still think it's a great read. You know, and then so I went online and I was trying to find, you know, copies of it, and I found some and stuff like that, and they're on the pricier side to get a copy of them.
Books are, you know, I'm not, you know, I think at the time we sold it for like about $38 or something. I can't remember. You know, it was a heavy, you know, and you know, I mean, if you look at this Ball Python book, this is a heavy book. This you know, it's this I think we sold for about $60. The printing costs and the shipping costs are heavy. And, you know, when I buy, you know, print books, you know, we print 1,000 or 2,000 or 3, you know, there's about 10,000 of this book floating around the world.
Yeah.
So it's an expensive thing to do. And if you're going to do it properly, you know, I don't just want to do some crappy book. And so that's why it's also taken me a while. But unfortunately, some people are charging, you know, I've seen books, you know, $100 or something. It's like, really?
Well, I have a website opened up right now because I was like, I know I saw it was expensive, and if anybody wants to go pick it up, it's on Abbey Books, so abebooks.com, and there's 3 used versions for $125 and a new for $194.50.
Wow.
That's a high markup, you know. So
That's crazy, man. So the new book's not going to be a new book. Probably I'm going to do like a quality soft cover this time,
okay,
and I think it'll be about it'll be under $40. Okay, so
cool.
not breaking the bank. I just want
Yeah,
to get.
yeah,
I want something that's light to ship as well,
yeah.
and yeah, I'll probably put a site up and do like a pre-sale if people want to, buy it at a better price, and then I'll sign them, and I get lots of people wanting me to sign the book, because they're buying them as gifts. So yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to getting it out there, because I know a lot of people waited, and some people have been really good with sending me photos. I've got some really cool photos in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have Delta Hogs, Josh. He's out in Texas. He says if he drives to Fort Worth, can he expect to get his copy signed?
Yeah. Hey, Delta Hogs. I think that's Josh. Yeah.
Yes, Josh.
Yeah. We literally just met online a couple of days ago. I'm actually on the other side, but what I would do, I'll sort of meet him in a coffee shop someplace, or I'm going to be. Hey, Josh, if you're on, there's a little show up in Denton. I think it's a Show Me Reptile show or something in Denton, which is north of Fort Worth in about it's about 2 weeks time. I'm going to be there. So my first little local show I'm doing here
Nice.
first show
That's
I've done
cool.
for about 4 years, and I'm just gonna go figure out, meet and start selling hogs and meeting people.
Cool. Yeah, because we had talked before setting up the podcast before at the Dallas show, and you were gonna try to make it out, but life comes out and stuff like that. So definitely,
I'll try and be there next year.
That'd be great. That'd be great to see.
I haven't been to an NARBC for a long time.
Yeah. So it was really nice. That new venue, it's it's nice. It's not the old venue, and there's some restrictions on the type of animals, but it's they're making do what they can, and with the venues that's available, that especially that allows reptiles in the building and stuff. So it's really cool.
Yeah,
John.
there's about I think. Sorry to cut you off. I was going to say, there's a lot of shows here just like in Florida. You've got a lot of the Repticons that have several Repticons here, and there's a couple of other small shows popping up. So Dallas Fort Worth is a well service community from the reptile show point of view. But if I will try and be at NARBC next year, hopefully with a book.
Yeah. That'll be great. That'll be really cool, actually, if you set up and you have your new books. Probably do book signing and stuff like that. It'd be really cool. I know you have a heart out tonight. Taking care of grandpa duties and stuff like that. So really cool. Any last topic you want to cover really quick? We got about a few more minutes that maybe we didn't cover. Keep in mind, we're gonna definitely, I'm gonna have you for round 2, because we need to dive deeper into the genetics and all that stuff.
Sure. Yeah, I think we didn't. Jeff did a great job on Jen. For a young guy, he's learning. He's getting there. He'll get there one day. I'm just kidding, Jeff. No, he's a good guy. So I think that he actually did and I haven't looked up. I haven't seen all your podcasts, but the ones I've seen have been pretty good. And
appreciate it.
So yeah, I think but the one thing that I say, why we're doing hogs, why don't we just talk about getting neonates to feed, and babies, because that's something you often see people ask about. Hey, I've had my snake for so long and it's not feeding. Again, hognose babies to feed is not difficult. You just got to try different scents, and I'm sure people notice, but I have in my freezer, I have sardine juice. You buy tin sardines in the water, not in the oil, obviously, or chili pepper or anything crazy. And I have salmon and I have tuna. And in my mind, I'd rather get them to feed than not feed. So I try, if they don't eat, unscented, try the pinky defrosted, obviously, split the brains. They're kind of like, Walking Dead zombie snakes. I like to eat the brains, and they smell it and they grab it. Or you just try the different scents. And I've tried everything over the years, from hot dog tin to chicken juice to, in Florida, cats and knolls, put it in water, you don't liquidize it, you just put it in the water, and then you got the water, and then you got that scent, and frogs and toads. But I find the best is to try, the fish scents, or you can get, you see, I've tried in the past, and I've seen people do a successfully buy some tadpoles. They sell them on eBay, and you keep the tadpoles that feeds, but most of them will feed. There's always going to be one or two that don't, that drive you mad, and unfortunately, it's going to often be your very best snake. I just had this thing, with like 5 genes, and the little bleep won't eat for me. But just persist, and also leave the snakes alone, man. Don't go and check them. Put the food in there, leave it overnight. Put in your rack. I see you got vision. Sea serpent racks. I love sea serpents. I got them here and in the other room. And put the food in, leave them. Most of the times they're going to eat.
Yes. Yeah. And is there a scent that you've seen over the years that works best? Or is still a wild?
To me, the best scents that have worked for my animals are tin salmon and sardine. Now I have other people that have said, and braining. If it's not going to feed on the defrosted pinky straight away, brain just make a little hole and squash some of the brains out. And I've had little hogs that won't eat, and it's like they put in there and they turn into a cobra and they grab it, where it doesn't want to eat. So it's just a trial and error. But once they feed them. And I've heard some breeders say, well, you don't want to get them onto scenting because you can't get them off. That's not true. They get off everything eventually. And I always say to people, if they want to buy, if I'm shipping animals and they've seen an animal, because I say a lot of stuff a lot of my stuff doesn't sell on it's just people I know, and they contact me all once in a while, and I tell them what I got. So if I have something that's eating on scented, I always say to them, hey, let me just get it off scented for you before I ship it. There's nothing worse than shipping a snake to somebody and you get that call. Hey, I've had this animal for like 7 weeks and hasn't eaten anything. It's like, why didn't you call me before?
Yes, don't wait. Don't wait. For sure. Yeah. And that's a great topic you brought up with the scenting and the feeding the hognose, starting the neonates. Also too, I think if you get a well-started hognose, and it's been eaten for the breeder 10 plus meals or something like that off scent, don't go back. I don't think it's a good thing to go back to scenting.
No, don't go back. No, I mean, the only time you go back is
see, we lost him for a few seconds here.
Sorry, this internet's up and down.
No worries.
About that. Yeah, so I mean, I've had animals that people have shipped to me, and they haven't eaten. And I said, okay, tell me the history, and then whatever they sent it, I have literally probably about twice I can remember had to go back to scenting just to kick it in the feed in again. And but 9 times out of hogs are pretty bulletproof little snakes. I always say to people, these are tough little animals. They feed well, they are tough, so they're not pedantic animals that don't like to feed. They like to eat. Okay, you just got to find what they like and then make them feel secure. And as you know, they're also they're not all the same. Some of them, you want to put a little hide in there, and you put the food in the hide and just leave them go away.
Yes.
Others, you open it and they jump out and they want to grab it off the tongue straight away.
Drop feeding works very well.
Drop feeding works. I don't. When you got a lot of animals, as as your collection grows, you don't have time to mess around. You literally just open the cage, drop it in there, and go out. And if they don't do the drop feeding, I just leave them in there, and then come back next day and just check everything.
I agree. Yeah. And that was a great closing topic, and definitely I'm gonna have you back on and just go deep into the hognose care, genetics, and all that stuff, because I know a lot of times that's what people really want to hear. Just like I did with Jeff, did the second round and have him on, and we talked a lot into genetics that whole podcast. And I think that's another one that we went over 2 hours. So there's a lot of information try to be covered within the hour, 2 hour, even 2 hour mark and stuff like that. But again, really, appreciate you coming on. Appreciate you, writing this book, because I think it is important. I almost say I wish I would have had it when I first started Hognose. It would have answered a lot of questions, but luckily I had Eslin to pick his brain off of it.
Island's a good guy, and there's a lot. There are good forums now, there are
Mm-hmm.
good groups. But yeah, I would love to come back, if your audience finds it useful, and we can do a deeper dive.
Mm-hmm.
So we can do the whole 2 hours on genetics if you want to. But
Yeah, yeah, that'd be great.
that might be
Yeah.
boring for some people. We'll see.
More people are really deep diving into genetics, polygenic, line breeding stuff. So it's very interesting. We did have Ethan Ray that came in late, and Ethan, John said that he's gonna release a new book either by the end of this year or first quarter next year. So stay in the lookout for that.
Yeah.
So John, everybody, if you guys are watching, appreciate you guys watching. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, leave a comment down below. And we covered a little bit about a few different species: hognose, ball pythons, boas, a little bit of John's, past with the venomous and stuff like that. So it was a really good conversation. And John, don't exit out into give me a quick second. But guys, we'll see you guys on the next one. And again, thank you to John for supporting the podcast and coming on. We'll see you guys in about 2 weeks.